Welcome to Behind the Muscle podcast. Today's guest is an IFBB pro and CEO of Paragon Waist Taper. Today's guest is Santi Aragon. Santi, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me. See, you guys have a lot of really high-end guests here, and it's good to join the group.
For sure, my man. So I'm excited to have you on. I like to kind of kickstart the podcast off with the same two questions for all of my guests, just to kind of keep the continuity. The first question, Santi, I have for you is, who are a few of your favorite bodybuilders of all time?
I think that being exposed to bodybuilding when social media didn't exist, you kind of were lit to see what was out there other than what you've seen in magazines and maybe what you've followed through some videos, DVDs that you would get from back in the day. I was always very fond of Lila Brada. Having a Cuban background myself, my parents both born in Cuba, it kind of was natural for me to gravitate towards somebody that was also born in Cuba. Not only that, but being a shorter guy myself, I felt like I could relate to somebody like that. What drove me towards him, on top of his incredible physique, his background that was very similar to mine, was just his posing. His posing was just, when I first saw it and I started researching and watching him, his YouTube videos and his posing routines, I was literally blown away. And that kind of just kept me very consistent. It's weird that, everything kind of circles back to itself in life. And I'm lucky enough now to be good friends with his son, Hunter, and also have been able to hang out with, we've always had these conversations where you just don't know who you inspire. You just don't know the people that you touch when you even come out and speak about certain topics or training, as little as, your past experiences and how you got here to this point. You don't know who you touch. So it's always interesting for me to sit down with somebody that has literally paved the way for other Cuban bodybuilders, and now for me to be able to say that he's a friend.
Excellent. Yeah, I love what you said there, Santi, about how kind of life, comes full circle or it comes around. You never know what's through that next door, what's around the corner in life. So that's super cool. Now, I want to ask you, are there some athletes within the IFBB currently that maybe you have competed against, or in the future you may compete against, but are there any current IFBB athletes, and it can be open men, it can be whatever category you want to pick, I don't care, that you kind of respect their physique, you kind of look up to them, or you're looking forward to competing against them in the future?
Well, one of the guys I've competed against multiple times, I actually got my pro card with him. This was in 2014 Nationals. I won my division as a welterweight, and then when we went for that overall pull down, he was the lightweight, which is going to be Terence Ruffin. Terence Ruffin, I think, has, and he just won the Arnold Classic this year. Congratulations to him. But he's always been somebody so consistent that has much work every single year, almost like the classic physique division of what Sean Clarita is, in my opinion. Small guy, has consistently put on size and gotten better every single year. And, I've hung out with him many times and, shoot the shit with him. And he's genuinely a very, very respectable person. And I think that, most people that don't get the pleasure of meeting somebody like that, there's so much more behind competitor than just what they display on stage. And that would be one of them.
Awesome, man. Yeah, that's cool. I just, through social media, Terence definitely seems like he's a breath of fresh air within the fitness industry, just that humility and work ethic. So the second question, Santi, that I have for you, just to kind of, again, kickstart the podcast, at what age did you start lifting weights? And then why did you start lifting weights at that age?
I started lifting weights probably like around 16 years old, mostly just due to sports. It had nothing, it had nothing really to do with building itself. I was a AAA tier one hockey player growing up, and that was basically most of my time was just focused in hockey all day long. You know, trying to go up the ranks and try to get into a good college. But just like a lot of bodybuilders can relate to this, there you get burnt out. You focus too much, you put too much of your time into something, and a lot of times you just get burnt out and you're just sick of it. It's almost like you eat a certain food for so long on prep, and after you're done with the prep, you don't even want to be around it. It was almost the same thing with me. So at age 18, I stopped hockey when I went into college. Now it was like, just like anything else, where you put so much focus, there's going to be a huge void in your life when you don't have something to fill that void for you. And luckily that void for me was filled through bodybuilding. Having some experience in the gym, the workouts for hockey were a lot different than they were for any type of bodybuilding. So I just became extremely obsessed with trying to read as much as I possibly can. I would buy, I would go into the store, to the grocery store, and whatever was out for that month, Flex magazine, MD, all of these magazines that I could get my hands on, I would read them cover to cover. I mean, I still have these magazines in a storage. I have boxes and boxes just filled with all these magazines. Back when MD was actually like a Bible. Like MD, you would buy an MD and you were there, for weeks at a time trying to get information in as possible. You didn't have much like I mentioned before, social media, or even doing quick Google search. Bodybuilding was very taboo and fitness was very taboo at that time. So the people that you can actually trust and listen to were some authors and some of these writers that, most of these people, we know them today. They have big social media followings now, but at that time, it was strictly just, you can get information just through magazines. So I filled myself with as much information as possible, reading through these magazines. And then I went in and did my first show. I was 18 years old, and I did a natural show. The federation was called the NGA, and I did a natural show. And, a funny story, I briefly brought my parents, but my parents are very old school. They're very old school Cubans that, immigrated at a very young age and assimilated to the culture here. But the culture still in a lot of Hispanic families is, the parents try to be as proud of what they do. They want to talk about their kids. And bodybuilding was tricky because it was just me getting on stage with a, little tiny posing trunks on. And they're like, we spend so much time in putting you in hockey and learning all these, disciplines through hockey. And how do you now go from that to stuck in your room reading about oily, greasy, veiny men and what is going on? And it wasn't the first competition that they saw how much work and how much time I did to prepare for this and actually win the show, that they were like, okay, maybe he has something here. And ever since then, it's just been, they've been my number one fans.
Perfect. Can you, Santi, maybe try to turn down your volume a little bit? Because I'm getting a little
echo.
Yeah, a little echo.
How's that?
Yeah, that sounded good. It just every once in a while it's echoing. So I just want to make sure we're good to go there. So that's super cool. Now 16, that's pretty young. Now I kind of like to take the listeners into the backstory of my guests. So we kind of touched on you starting lifting weights. You've already brought up hockey. Sounds like you were very competitive with hockey. Will you kind of paint the picture a little bit for us, Santi, please, of your childhood? Again, touch on the hockey, but did you grow up with any siblings? You kind of already mentioned your heritage and kind of the old school ways of your parents, but just paint that picture a little bit more of some of the other activities that you were involved in childhood and kind of what the childhood was like overall, if you don't mind.
I'm an only child, which is very unusual for a Hispanic family. Usually we're known to have really large families. Now, I have a huge family when it comes to like cousins and, cousins, and then cousins, brothers and sisters, all that. I have a very large extended family. But my family, I mean, my parents, I mean, I know that when the day comes that I'm lucky enough to be a parent, if I could just be a percent of the way that they did bringing me up, I will be very good. I will be good, and I will be very happy with the way that I did it. My parents very supportive, you know, from day one on whatever my mind to, whether it's school, whether it's sports, business. You know, sometimes it takes a little bit of warming up, you know, to the idea of whatever I'm doing, but super supportive. I mean, they did their best to sacrifice as much as possible. Have me in a private school, try to get the best education that I can, and instill, you know, whatever morals that they can, you know, to set my future up and not make the same mistakes that they did as they were growing up. My parents were very strict though, very strict when it came to school, very strict when it came to my sports, which I would say is, you know, the precept to me actually doing bodybuilding and doing it well, that they kind of made that foundation very stable for me to now take anything that I want and say, hey, if you do these things and you do it the way that we taught you, regardless if you're the best or not or whatever, as long as you're putting 100% into it and you have a game plan, you know, to go into it and actually do that game plan that you set out, you could be very successful. And that's kind of like anything that I do in life. I try to just take those same things that they use growing up and try to apply it as best as possible.
Now, was academic something that your parents, you know, really strongly encouraged and kind of pushed you in, or not so much?
Yeah. Like for instance, I knew who to come to, which was my mom versus my dad. When it came to shit, I didn't do so well on this test, because I knew that if I went to the wrong person, then hockey, they would take it away from me. So it was always like, you had this incentive and you were incentivized to do well in school because you knew what you were risking by not doing well at school. And I loved hockey. All my friends that I made were basically from hockey, that I still have these friends to this day. So not only did I wanted to hang out with my friends. So it always gave me an incentive. They always gave me an incentive to do well in school. If it was sports, great. If it was because I wanted to buy a certain video game thing, great. You want that? Here's the incentive. I think that a lot of the kids growing up these days, you know, do not have the incentive structure like how we did growing up. And I think that it's hurting the next generation of kids. I feel like everything's a handout. You still have to work hard for these things regardless, you know? So I think that just having these ideas that they instilled with me early on, I think that it helped me out in the long run.
Absolutely. Now, when it comes to hockey, how did you kind of get into hockey? How did you get exposed to hockey? And just talk about maybe some of the lessons that you learned from those years of competitive hockey that have kind of like spilled over into adulthood.
Yeah. So hockey is unusual because usually a Cuban from Miami doesn't end up playing hockey. Living in South Florida in the late 90s, so like 96, 97, around there, 98. This is when the Florida Panthers just started their franchise team over there, which kids 7 years old were really excited. We're like, wow, look at this new game. Look at this game, hockey. You're on ice skates and all this stuff and sticks. This is awesome. So it just so happened that within years of them having that franchise just starting, they made it into the playoffs and they made it into the Stanley Cup championship, which is unheard of. I mean, in any sport, it's really unheard of in a couple of years for a franchise team that far. Well, it just kind of paved the way for this movement in South Florida for hockey. Extremely talented and extremely good players that saw this as kids and they're like, I want to do this. So we had this big wave of talented and 8, 9-year-olds that we literally, when we met each other for the first time playing hockey, 7, 8, I mean, we were playing all the way until we were 18. So we grew up with each other on the basis of this game. Some of the things, you know, that were tough in hockey were definitely commitment aspect. I mean, try to get an 8-year-old to wake up at 5:30 in the morning to go skating every single week. Not only that, but after school, you had to go get back on the ice. And then you had to just redo this over and over, week in and week out. Now we compare that to bodybuilding. You wake up, you do your cardio in the morning, you got to get out of bed, you got to get yourself a schedule. And you're doing this day in and out, you're like a machine. So this idea of me having to wake up and having a schedule and doing everything according to the way that it needs to be with school and with like I said, it's just a way that when bodybuilding came around, it was kind of like, okay, like I did this already, in some way or another, I kind of did this already. So the discipline aspect, I don't think was so hard. I think the hardest part of bodybuilding compared to hockey is that one is a team sport, and one essentially is, if you're not going to do the work, nobody else is going to do it for you. So a bad game in hockey, there's usually going to be somebody else that's going to pick up the slack for me. There is nobody that's going to pick up the slack for me if I don't put in the work in bodybuilding. And I think that would be the huge difference. Took a little bit to get used to because I didn't have to rely on anybody else, but at the same time, nobody else has to rely on me. So whatever work that I put in is usually what I'm going to get out.
100%. Excellent. Now, one other thing I want to touch on in regards to your childhood, being an only child, do you kind of look back and are you thankful for that? Or do you kind of have, maybe like a wish that maybe you had a sibling or two? How do you think being an only child kind of affected you in a positive or negative way?
Well, I have this conversation with my parents all the time. It's like, why did me? Why by myself? And I understand work, and everything kind of gets in the way and everything gets put aside to make sure that, you're doing your best with the one that you have. And, I always wish that I always had a brother, whether it was older or younger, just so that I can share the same, gifts that my parents gave me to somebody else, but also be able to live a life where I'm able to then help them, whatever mistakes that I made growing up, like I want them to not have to make these mistakes and learn from my mistakes. So I think that right there is probably, I wish, yes, that's the positive. I think that's the negative part, but the positive part is that I grew up by myself. So, at the age of like 14, 15, I get home, I'm by myself. In the morning, my parents go to work, I'm by myself. Summer times, unless I was with my grandparents, I'm by myself. And that right there, again, paved the way for bodybuilding too, because you have to be able to learn how to be alone in bodybuilding. Yes, I understand that there's, you have your girlfriend and you have family that are for you and cheering for you. But the sacrifice that you make at an individual basis, nobody else can share that other than you. Nobody can relate to that other than you right there at the moment. So I think being able to be comfortable with being by myself for long periods of time kind of made it easier for me than other people that get ready for shows, because I could just be by myself. I could be on my own.
Makes a lot of sense, man. It's so fascinating and interesting how, those experiences and the people that are in our lives during childhood, how all of that kind of can really have a huge impact on the rest of our lives. So that's super fascinating perspective with being an only child, and then how it kind of plays into bodybuilding. Now, what did post high school look like for you, Santi? Did you go to college? What did you do after you graduated high school?
I went to college in Orlando. This is immediately after I stopped playing hockey. I went up to Orlando. I did 3 years there before I moved back home to finish my schooling. But I was there for 3 years, which was actually pretty interesting because a lot of the things that I was doing through bodybuilding came through the gyms from people that were training in Orlando. So I got to learn a lot bodybuilding in Orlando. That's the first time I had a coach, the first time that I was exposed to a real contest prep with multiple weeks of getting ready. When I was in college, I was able to sneak in one more year of teenage nationals when teenage nationals was a thing. I was 19 years old. I I met the first person that was coaching me over there, and he's like, you're 18 turning 19. You know, you got one more year that you can, he's in teenage and collegiate nationals. And I'm like, I didn't even know what the hell that was. I didn't even know what they had nationals for teenagers and collegiate all this stuff. So I did my due diligence. I did research. I qualified for a show, which I won in Orlando. I did an open class. I qualified, and then I went on to do teenage nationals and ended up winning that. And there was a lot of guys in that teenage, not in my age division, but that still compete to this day. And we're talking about, 10, 12 years ago. And again, this is when teenage nationals, you had about 10 guys per class, 15 guys per class. That is non-existent now.
Right. So what did you study in college, or what were you kind of focusing on in terms of what you wanted to be, once you finish up your schooling?
Just like most people, I had no fucking idea. I had no fucking idea. I was kind of just going with the flow. I ended up getting a degree in business, which helps me out now with my business. Just like most things, unless you're doing something in science or doing something, that's mathematical, schooling is relative. It's mostly what job are you going to get after, and what experiences are you going to learn along the way that are going to help you in the future. But I think that, for the most part, most of the stuff that I learned in school for businesses and financing and stuff, I don't use them today. I mean, the internet's so vast that you just pick up a YouTube real quick and you can learn finance in 10 minutes. Sure. So, it did help me, for the most part, but again, the business degree didn't really do much for me.
Right. Yeah. My bachelor's degree is in exercise science. I took some business classes, but looking back, it's like, I wasted a lot of money just to get a piece of paper with some signatures on it,
Exactly.
So I'm right with you now. So I want to just kind of fully dive into the bodybuilding side of things. So
yeah,
you said your first show, you were 18, then you were competing at the national level when you were 19. Now you said when you went to Orlando, that's when you were kind of exposed to a bodybuilding coach and like a real prep. Talk about that initial coach, talk about that initial, like, quote unquote, real prep. Like, did that kind of really encourage you and motivate you and fire you up for bodybuilding once you kind of knew, like, okay, this guy actually knows what he's talking about. This is kind of like a real prep. Like I'm really doing the bodybuilding lifestyle right now. Did that kind of encourage you and fire you up or not?
Probably not. Probably because soon after that, I had to go get gyno surgery. So a lot of people that don't have context on this is again, the internet was so new in the sense that you can't just Google a steroid or anything and not know, get information on it. It was very taboo. So you kind of go based on like what people, professionals that you trust were telling you to do and telling you what you can and can't do. Now, I'm going to date some people here. At that time, you can go to a Max Muscle supplement shop. You can go to a GNC and get your hands on pro hormones. It was easy. It was legal to get. And that seemed to me like, oh, it's just a pill. Like, it's no big deal. It's just a pill. It'll help me out, get ready for the show. It's better than me having to inject myself or anything like that. And, little do we know now that the pro hormones were definitely way more toxic, way more crazy than anything that you can inject into, granted the quality, granted, the dosing, etc. So it kind of put a bad taste into my mouth after that, because now I needed to repair myself after I did initial damage. So there was a reluctance to even prep another show after I got this surgery done. It was expensive, the surgery, and it set me back a lot of time because the recovery period. And it wasn't until 2 years after that I had mentioned that I moved back to Miami to finish my degree, that I finally said, fuck it, I'm going to prep for another show. I found another coach here in Miami, and very old school when it comes to prep. I forgot who. Oh, it was Boston Lloyd the other day. that he had a post that he had mentioned, has anybody prepped and not done, done any sodium, meaning 0 sodium on your prep? That old school prep, 0 sodium, everything boiled, distilled water at the end, just shit loading before the show. All of these old school, methods that, again, never been exposed to. I didn't even know that they existed, but it seemed to work. So I just kept going with it. Now when you look at that prep, you're like, I should have probably been dead, not doing no sodium and drinking distilled water and taking the diuretics to get ready for the show and peak for the show. All of these factors. Now I look and I laugh just because of the information that I know. But at the time and the way that I looked, shit, it was working. So I went ahead. I did a show when I was 21. It was a big show called Southern States. Southern States is like the pinnacle show in South Florida and all the Southern, for you to step up and see if you have what it takes to then move on to nationals, which nationals now, they always hold it in Miami. So for me, that was a stepping stone. That show was a stepping stone to go in, win my division, lost the overall as a welterweight by 1 point in the overall pose down, low, and me going into the first time that I did USAs that same year. I was exposed to USAs on. I ended up doing USAs for 2 years after that, before then finally saying, fuck it, why am I even doing, why am I out to Vegas when I could just go to my backyard? And in 2014, I ended up going to nationals in my backyard and teaming up with Stan McQuay, and we ended up winning that show.
Okay, so before we kind of get into the pro level conversation, going back to kind of like that first coach that you had in Orlando. Now, the pro hormones and all of that type of stuff, was that something that he was encouraging you to do or telling you to do, or was that kind of just by choice through you reading magazines and thinking like, hey, this is what I should be doing?
It was collective, just like anything else in bodybuilding or anything like that, where you're like, I see these coaches that are telling, their clients to do these crazy, peak week protocols and all this stuff. But at the end of the day, it comes down to the user. Put blame on this coach for encouraging me to do it. But at the end of the day, I opened the bottle. I took the pill. I felt good. And I liked the way that I was looking, which encouraged me to continue to doing it. I was at a disadvantage at that time because there wasn't a lot of information out there, as opposed to now you have a infinite amount of information to get a cycle or anything like that, or ingredients or whatever it may be that you're maybe not comfortable because you don't have enough research. You can do hours and months and years of research. It's all right here. At the time, I didn't have that luxury. So I could take for what the coach was telling me, apply it to myself. But again, the responsibility came down to me, because at any time I could have said, no, I'm not going to take any of this stuff. I don't know what these chemicals do, but I didn't. I just freely, I love the way that I look, and I kept on with it. So basically the pro hormones, he knew that I didn't want to take any injectables. So that was the only closest alternative at that time.
Right. Okay. So speaking to a younger person with all of your experience now, speaking to a younger person that's thinking about getting into bodybuilding or just getting into bodybuilding, and even with all the information, out there, there's some, I know you are pretty open about different things, and you mentioned Boston Lloyd. There's a few of you out there that are very open and real and transparent with all sides of bodybuilding, but yet still with social media, we see the muscles, we see the cars, we see the girls, we kind of see what people want to show us, right? So somebody that's younger, they're still going to be kind of probably pretty naive. What can you say to the younger person that's just getting into bodybuilding or thinking about getting into bodybuilding or competing? What are some encouraging words that you can give them, Santi, just in terms of like some of your experiences, maybe some cautionary words, just say, hey, think about this, do this, don't do this. What do you got for those younger listeners?
Be fucking stupid. And really, if I, most of the time when I have a Q&A and somebody asks that question, if you can go back 10 years, what would you change? I jumped into the chemical game way too soon that now I have to be on TRT for the rest of my life, hoping that once I get off, I'm able to have kids, etc. But I'm on TRT for the rest of my life. I did until I was in my mid-20s before even having to jump on a cycle or anything like that. I think this is the problem that the younger upcoming, wave of bodybuilders, that they see these results that these guys are having, but they don't, that they've been doing it for so long. These guys have been putting the time, putting in the work. So something that's so new to them, the last thing that they need to do is start introducing chemicals. Learn the lifestyle first. Learn how to eat. Learn how to calculate your dose. Learn how to train. Hire people to help you learn how to train. Okay. It wasn't until I was a pro, after so many years of competing, that I finally learned the right way that my body should be training versus, me reading the magazines or anything like that. It took a lot of time. And I think that people just want that instant satisfaction of getting the likes and all these things on social media, that they're willing to do whatever it takes and not weigh out the cost to risk benefits from it. And let me tell you right now, the benefits of you taking steroids way early, yeah, they're great. I mean, you change your physique, people are going to notice, wow, look at these changes. But down the line, once you're in your 30s, once in your 40s, 50s, you are going to look back and you're going to do what I do. And you're going to be thinking, shit, what waited a little while? Or what if I hired the right person to steer me the right way, throughout these preps, and not just go for that idea, like, I'm going to get you shredded as fast as possible or at any cost, because that's what you hired me for. Yes, that's what I hired you for. But at the same time, I don't want to die doing it. And most people that are my age now, that have been doing this for time, once they finish bodybuilding and they move on in life, they're going to have to, live with the consequence that these chemicals have done to them. I mean, unfortunately. So again, my advice is, wait, take your time. That bodybuilding is a marathon. It's not a sprint. 1000%. And the best, and I had mentioned him before, Sean Clarita. Talk about a marathon. I mean, started as a bantamweight, but he didn't put on 50 pounds in 1 year. The man just started away each year, another 6 here, another 8 there. But then you look back 10 years from when he started, the gap is huge. But if you look at the gap between year to year, it's minute, almost like nothing. So take your time. That's all I can say. Take your time.
Excellent, man. I appreciate you sharing that and touching on that. That's super valuable advice, Santi. Now, you said you earned your pro card at the 2014 Nationals. Talk about, and you mentioned you hired Stan McQuay. Talk about, what he kind of helped you, overcome, or what he kind of helped you accomplish in terms of earning that pro card. What did he kind of bring to the table to take you to that next level?
Well, that prep was both easy and brutal at the same time. We had worked together for USA's the year prior to that, and that's when I took time off. I was opening up a business shortly after I did USA's. This was in 2013, and I didn't want anything to do with bodybuilding until my business was stable and ready to go, that I could now focus on bodybuilding 100%. I wasn't, sharing time and like that. So I stepped away after 2013 USA's and opened up my business. And I figured after the business opened, I'm like, you know what? I don't know if I want, I enjoy living a normal life. I enjoy going out with my friends. I enjoy having a social life. That was the first year that I decided to why don't I just get shredded just for fun? Just because it's a summertime and want to look good. Let me just do something that I haven't done before and make it something enjoyable. So I did everything on my own. I dieted on my own. I did my cardio because I wanted to do cardio, not because I was feeling forced, because I'm on prep. So all these different factors kind of put me in a mental space where I felt good, nice. I was eating what I should be eating. I was eating clean on the weekend. I'd have an off meal. It felt phenomenal. I was peeled, shredded in the off season. I was veins in the abs, everything. And Stan had to hit me up. He's like, yo, what are your plans for this year? Like, I see you look sick. You look like you're prepping for a show right now. Stan, I don't want to do anything right now. Having fun with my friends. I'm having fun with life right now. And it was about 2 weeks after they announced that Nationals, for the first time in about 4 years, is going to be in Miami. And it was almost like, fuck. I'm like, they're doing it in Miami. I feel like now I need to do it. Like, I don't have a freaking choice. I have to do it. Qualified from doing USA's the year before. And I'm like, okay, so this is a sign I probably have to do it. Now, the trouble is that I've never prepped on such a lean state already. You know, the food was going to get lower than it already was. The cardio, I was already doing about 45 minutes of cardio every single day. So the cardio, we had to increase that. And the other factor that we always struggled with, even me as a pro, is making weight. It's very difficult for me to make weight. Some guys, like I always tell Terence, you got fucking hollow bones. I don't know how you weigh what you do when you weigh. It's crazy. But for me, the visual changes happen, but the scale never moves. So I might start a prep at 180 pounds. I end up at 180 pounds after the 12 weeks. So it's always very tricky for me to make weight. And we really had to suffer lately for that show. The only thing that was good is I started at a lean state. We only had to prep for 8 weeks for that show, which most people know the conditioning that I brought at that 2014 Nationals was absolutely absurd. You know, I haven't been able to closely match that condition, but we were literally eating, just an idea of what I was eating these days. I had to do my cardio in the morning. So about 45 minutes on the stairs. I was burning towards about 600 calories in those 45 minutes. It was just intervals on the stairs like crazy. I mean, I was like a marathon runner at that point. Then I would work all day. And then at about 7 or 8 o'clock, that's when I would be able to go to the gym after work. After I closed my store, I could go, and then I had to do cardio immediately after that. So we're doing about 2 45-minute sessions. The highest that we did were 3 45-minute sessions per day to try to get this down, whatever this weight was that was on me. Now, I had an argument with Stan, when the weight wasn't going down. He said, fuck it, why don't you just be a middleweight? Why do we have to go down to welterweight? I go, the best champions that come in are the ones that suck down to that one. I lost 1 year against Breon Ansley. Have you ever heard of him? Breon Ansley used to be a light heavyweight. And when we did USA's 1 year, he came down to middleweight. When I was competing there, he just trashed everybody. It was not even close. It wasn't even a close call on that one. So I used that idea. I'm like, I want to be like Breon. I want to come down one weight class. So it's not even a question that I'm the winner of that class. We were eating about 5 to 6 meals of just fish, a lot of greens. And then I got 1/2 cup of rice after training. So I had to wait and there are no fats included. I had to wait all the way until nighttime, 9, 10 o'clock before I could have my 1/2 cup of rice. So it was straight torture. I have a video on YouTube. They used to go out and they used to video people in the trenches. There's one of me doing my last leg training session. And I had to tell the guy that was doing the video, I'm like, just don't talk to me the whole time. I'm brain dead. Just don't talk. Just video me. If I have time, if I have energy, I'll speak to the camera, but that's about it. We did the whole training session. I didn't even speak until he filmed me doing my 45 minutes of cardio. When I rewatch that, I'm like, what the fuck, Wayne? I was just rambling the whole time because I was running on fumes. But hey, it really set the way for me to make a mark in the NPC and then going into the IFBB because of that conditioning that I brought to know. And I have a lot of thanks to Stan for that.
Now, what was it like kind of in that moment? You go through this prep. I mean, you just grinded through, came in your all-time best conditioning. When you knew that you had earned and received your IFBB Pro card, like what were kind of the feelings? What were the emotions? What was kind of going on inside of your mind in that moment or at that moment?
It was probably one of the better days that I've had just because, again, it was in Miami. So all my friends and all my family were there. It wasn't a question after prejudging that I didn't smoke everybody. I mean, it was immediately center, never moved once. They had me do one round of quarter turns and they called me right off. Like it wasn't, that was the most uninteresting prejudging I've ever been a part of. Just because it ran so quickly. We did one quarter turn and they called me off, and then that was that. But I think the scary part, after I got the trophy and I realized, the next step is, I think that's what concerned me the most was, holy shit, I put so much time and effort into this prep, and I weighed in at 165 pounds. At that time, they didn't have classic physique division. They didn't have any of these other divisions that existed. So the natural pecking order is going to be, now I got to do 212. But I've never even weighed over 185 pounds in an off season. How the hell am I going to get to that weight? And I think that's what scared me the most. That actually scared myself the most, is knowing that if you were extreme for 165 pounds, what does 200 look like? What does 220 look like? Where does it go from here? And I think that always kind of stuck in my head, that fear of having to push to the absolute limit just because your body doesn't want to go there. So, and I struggled with that all through my pro career. Not do I do classic? Do I do 212? Do I go up? Do I go down? Where is my place in bodybuilding? And I think that my place now is just creating a business and giving out information like how I'm doing. I think that's my place in bodybuilding as of right.
Yes, excellent. Now we're going to get into the business side of things, because I own a business myself, and I'm always I have a business mind. I love entrepreneurship and all the things that kind of entails. But before we do, I do want to touch on your pro career. So what was your pro debut? And like you mentioned, like there was this going back and forth between classic and 212. I know you competed in both. But what was your pro debut? And then just talk about maybe some of those ups and those downs of your pro career. So maybe touch on your highlight, maybe touch on, anything that you want to share that was maybe like a setback or a struggle or difficulties within being an IFBB pro.
So soon after I got my pro card, I decided that I would, because me and Stan, you have to understand, like, we became such good friends. To this day, we're very good friends. And me and Stan, it was tough for me to work with somebody that I felt that it was more like a friendship and not like a business thing, like me paying you and then me getting to where I wanted to get to. And you just, it was tough for me to hear it from a friend rather than somebody that I just have no connection. Your job, I hired you for this job. Now let's do it. So that's when I decided to start training under Matt Porter. And I trained Porter for the better part of 2 years, going into my first real off season of bodybuilding, getting into 212 and actually getting ready for my pro debut, which was also in Miami, which was the Miami Pro, which was a very interesting show. Just like what anybody would expect. If you're going from a small guy to trying to put on as much size as you months, everything's going to go up. Your training's going to go up. Your cardio is going to go up. Your drugs are going to go up. Your food's going to go up. Everything is going to go up. And I started prepping down for that show when I finally was hit 200 pounds, which I've never been able to, even if I tried and I stuffed my face all day. And we got ourselves to 200 pounds before we came back down into the high 180s for our pro debut. I thought for pro debut, people were expecting something that was unreal for me, which was the same conditioning that I brought to nationals. I feel like I've only been able to bring that style of conditioning one other time after nationals, but people don't understand the amount of shit that I had to do to get ready for that. Most people, they just wouldn't be able to prep for another show ever again. it was very difficult. And for me to look at this a longevity thing, number one, and number two, me not being so burnt out after one show to be able to continue to do shows, it was realistic for me to come in that type of conditioning again. It was very difficult. But we made a very good debut. There was about 2 guys in that show, and I think I was 10th in that show. And I was by far the smallest as far as weight goes. And I was going up against guys in that second call out that had me by about 20 pounds, which I was very, very happy with. After that show, they then announced the Classic Physique division very shortly after. And then my sights just went to the Classic Physique division after that. I thought it was perfect for me. I didn't have to push the drugs so hard. I didn't have to push the food so hard. And I was always known for my posing that was very close to like something that Lee Labrada did. And I felt like that was a perfect home for me to marriage both the conditioning, the posing, and just kind of everything in at once, and trying to get away from the extremes of 212. After that, I competed in a couple classic physique shows. I did okay. Again, it was very difficult for me to make weight at the time. The weight cap was a lot smaller than what it is now. Now the weight caps are way higher, especially for the pro levels. So as time went on, it was easier and easier for me to make weight going into the classic physique divisions. After that, I joined with Andrew Vu. He's my coach now. We've been, again, same guy. We've been friends for a very long time. And I felt like for classic physique, I wanted somebody that was easy to talk to, and somebody that I could collaborate with and give ideas back and forth and give him the feedback that my body's giving me, and coming up with a game plan together. I think after I experienced with all these other coaches and I would watch how my body would change, I kind of knew the formula of what body needed and how to get lean, but I also needed somebody that was able to compromise with and able to come up with a game plan with me. And that was the guy. Andrew was my guy for that. Puerto Rico was a very awesome show for me. I placed second in the classic physique division there. And it was a very exciting time. Puerto Rico, it was me prepping for that show. It was just so easy, and it kind of reminded me a lot how things went with nationals. I was about 15 pounds heavier than I was when I got my pro card, and the conditioning was just out of this world. Like our photos, when I post those photos of us getting ready for that show, I couldn't believe that I was able to get that having to take like T3 and all these other crazy drugs, and our cycles were very, very, minimal compared to what other guys I know that were doing at that time. That year was probably the year that I had the most fun, because shortly after I placed second in Puerto Rico, I wanted to do more shows, but there was nothing on the schedule. There was nothing there. So me and Andrew, being crazy motherfuckers, we said, why don't we just do a 212 show? We just did a classic physique show. You waited at one. Why don't we just go into do a show that's 212? I mean, who cares? The idea was just keep you in shape and continue to bridge. So I'm like, fuck, well, what do I have to lose? I'm the smallest guy there. Everybody's going to be outweighing me. I'm like, fuck it. We saw the Dallas Europa show. Dallas Europa comes around. I'm calling it like as a joke, because I wasn't expecting much. And we're backstage. We did the work for that show. I was huge. I put on 10 pounds of volume, not 10 pounds of muscle, but I put on 10 pounds of volume. I weighed in with all my clothes on going into that show. And I'm there backstage. We're pumping up. And then I have Hidetada come in, Hide's there. And Dora's there. These guys have all been at the Olympia. And I'm like, fuck. I'm like, this is crazy. Like I'm going up against these guys. I get up age, I do my routine, judging comes around, and then I'm in the first call out. I'm like, fuck, okay, this is great. This is cool to be in first call out. They push us all aside, and probably one of my main highlights of, especially that year, was coming out in a top 3 call out. They brought just us 3, and we were battling it hard on stage. We were battling it hard, and Hide was in the magazines when I was in my college apartment reading, and I'm like, wow, look at this guy. He's only 6. he's going up against all these, huge monsters, and he's placing top 10 at the Olympia. This is insane. So it was like kind of like a dream of mine to be able to get on stage with somebody like that I was able to, I used to read all your articles and stuff, and now we're battling up on stage and doing a pose down together. I ended up placing third in that show, which was, for me, it was a win. I beat 15 other guys that were true to 12 guys. And it was very rewarding. That show was very, the last show, just to keep it short, was going to be the Arnold Classic right before the pandemic happened in 2019. Yeah, 2019 Arnold Classic, when I was able to qualify. You submit your application to do the Classic Physique, and I was able to get into that show and I got sick show, but I was able to do my posing routine on the actual main stage. So that was probably my last highlight so far. Bodybuilding was actually being able to compete at the Arnold Classic and kind of check that off my bucket list.
Absolutely, dude. It's the second biggest show in the world as a professional bodybuilder. And it's an honor. And I can't even imagine what it was like to step on that stage. Now, you touched on a couple of the highlights. If you don't mind sharing, what have been a couple of the struggles or setbacks, or maybe something that those of us that are kind of on the outside looking in maybe don't know or understand about bodybuilding, and maybe your own personal experience as a IFBB pro?
I think anytime that you trying to balance a relationship and try to compete at such a high level, those are probably going to be the people that you're going to let down the most, because you really have to focus on yourself. And it's very difficult to focus on other people while also trying to compete at the highest level. And this isn't anything in business or anything like that. If you're trying to cruise on, you think that your girlfriend is really going to it's just you have to weigh things in different ways. And sometimes these are the people that you're going to let down the most. And I think that, I think being in relationships and a lot of these preps and being in a relationship with the wrong type of person really is going to be the biggest letdown, because you've put in a lot of time in both bodybuilding and in this person. And now you're sitting there having to choose, which one am I going to focus on? Am I going to focus on the business, what's putting food on the table every day, what's, increasing my bank account, and what's to travel and see things that I'm not supposed to, if I didn't do this? Or am I going to choose this person? And sometimes the answer is not that easy. And sometimes you make a decision based on, all the available that you have. And, every one of which those times I've chosen bodybuilding, or I've chosen my business, or I've chosen these things that are always, they're tangible. They're there, these things are what's helping me move forward in life. And that's something that a lot of people don't see happening behind the scenes in bodybuilding, is what are some of the external stressors that are going into this prep? All I see is him posting his progress pictures every single week. Maybe he's not getting better, but you're not getting the full picture of it. So I think that those are the biggest letdowns that I have, is being with certain people, or having certain people in my life that were going to be reliable through these preps. And later on, I find out that they were just a weight, they're just a weight on my ankle that's not allowing me to go head on. So partly my fault for not vetting, certain people properly, but at the same time, making that decision to part ways is also just as hard of a decision too.
Awesome, man. I appreciate you touched on that. Now, Andrew Vu, I know his name. I've heard his name come up quite often with other IFBB pros on podcasts, and them discussing their who their coach is and stuff. Why don't you just touch on, what he's kind of brought to the table for you? We've talked about Stan. You mentioned Matt. Not comparing, Andrew to any of your other coaches, because that's stuff that's happened in the past. But what is the strength of Andrew, and what has he kind of brought to the table for you? And just talk about that relationship, if you don't mind, Santi.
Well, me and Andrew have been friends for the better part of a decade. So I think that trust is going to be very, very hot with somebody like that, especially somebody that, you have to trust for, certain, again, bringing up the chemicals and stuff like that. And, really just caring about you as a human first, because it's your friend and not just as a client. I think that that's one strength that me and Andrew have, is that he's looking as a person versus just me as a client. I think that's number one. Number two is that we've built a relationship when it comes to business and prepping, that we both understand the formula to use for my particular body, because he always tells me, he's like, you're the hardest fucking person to prep, just because one day you're this and one day your body looks like this, and then we fucking not feed you and then you still gain 2 pounds. Like, how is this possible? So I think having somebody that has had the experience with me can understand, because any other coach, if I tell them, yo, like I ate this week, they're gonna probably oh, well, you probably cheated on your. And somebody like that has been around me for so long knows, okay, I know how to fix this. The last time, this happened, we did this and it worked. So I think having somebody like that has almost run through troubleshooting literally every scenario with you is a huge plus. Just prepping with him is easy. Having him as a friend is easier. And that's probably moving forward is probably the only person that I be or trust with doing my preps. And he has an incredible roster of athletes that he's built up over the years, and he's not a big social media person, which is unusual in the sense that he gets such high-end clients working with him, winning huge shows, and him not really being such a prominent social media. It goes to show that his work speaks louder than just the posts that he makes, and that word of mouth really does it for him.
What do you think makes a great coach, specifically prep coach, bodybuilding coach?
I think one's going to be just knowledge. I mean, that's going to be number one. I mean, you got to get somebody that knows what they're talking about. Number two, somebody that knows how to troubleshoot well, because everybody's body's different. If one thing goes wrong with somebody, doesn't mean that the same fix is going to work on them. So I think somebody that listens and somebody that is able to troubleshoot, somebody that has experience with different types of bodies, somebody that maybe can take somebody that their physique is not very good and make them better. Maybe not make them into a champion, but make them better to what their body can actually get to. I think we as people in bodybuilding and people in fitness look too much at the coaches that have champions, but never look and analyze and see, well, where was that person before they became a champion? Were they already that good? Were they already like 2 steps from Mr. Olympia or whatever it is? Where did they start? And there's only a couple coaches that I see that I go, wow, look at that, transformation that they made. They look like they were just a normal, bodybuilder. And now look at what somebody was able to dial them in perfectly. Again, I think that we take for granted too many of these coaches that will show, oh, look, I have Mr. Olympia, or I have this person, or I have that person. Yeah, but you got them already when they were already a fucking champion. And I think that the good coaches are the ones that can take normal average people or people that don't have maybe superior genetics and just make them into the best that they possibly can. And those are if you have the eye for it, those are the types of transitions that should be more impressive. People that maybe they place third in a pro show and now they're placing first. Ooh, that's not really a huge gap,
Makes sense. Okay, before we touch on business here, before we wrap things up, just bodybuilding overall for your life, for Santi, when you think about bodybuilding, when you think about what it's done for you, what it's given you, like what are some words for you, Santi, to describe bodybuilding? And again, what it's given you, what it's taught you, what is bodybuilding to you specifically?
If I could sum it up in one word, bodybuilding has given me freedom. that I'm in a financial position because of bodybuilding to speak freely about, the real bodybuilding and not be tied down to having, a sponsor or somebody now not allowing me to be myself. So having my own business and being able to make money through bodybuilding has allowed me to just be myself, be my own personality. So that a lot of bodybuilders out there are, tied down to contracts and all of these different things that they're not allowed to be themselves, and they're not allowed to educate other people, the realities of this. I mean, you could literally help one person by giving them a past experience, negative experience or positive experience that you had in the past. So bodybuilding has given me the freedom to make money through it. And it's also given me the freedom to allow me to be myself. And I think that right there is very important in the day and age of social media, where, you can't really go by what people are posting in their pages and stuff like that. So I think that having open format podcasts like this, you really get an idea of what the person behind the page is.
Hence the name Behind the Muscle Podcast. Behind the Muscle,
exactly.
No, that's beautiful, man. I love that. Bodybuilding has given me freedom. That's super cool. Now, that freedom that you just mentioned is making money, business. I think this is an area that whether you're in bodybuilding or not, all of us can learn more about business and how to make more money and set ourselves up for the future and our families and all of that type of stuff. So when did you, because you alluded to it earlier, like when you were kind of in the you, even as an amateur, when you were much younger, you started your own business. So just talk about starting a business, talk about maybe some of those lessons that you've learned within business, and just kind of unpack that experience, if you don't mind.
Yeah. So the first business that I got into a franchise that has nothing to do with bodybuilding. And I'm sure that most people here that are in the US, they know business is called You Break, I Fix. We've all broken our phones one time. So I bought into this franchise, and that I owned a store doing that, which allowed me a lot of freedom for me to continue to do my training, continue to train people online and do little things that I can, scavenge money here and there, but also have that, the full store that was my main business. As soon as I saw that the business was starting to level off, I wanted to find something else, and something that was fitness related that could fill in a niche that maybe people weren't tapping into. And my initial thought was, just make, a couple $100 a week extra doing this. And maybe, I have extra drinking money on the weekend. I hang out with my friends or whatever. And I noticed that the exception of men's physique and classic physique and the whole, concentrating on smaller waist and all of this stuff, I saw that there was a lot of guys wearing waist trainers, and that we just didn't really talk. It was something that we'll own our waist trainer and we are not going to post about it or anything like that. And I saw like, shit, every guy's fucking buying a waist trainer, and they're for girls. So why don't I just make one for guys and just market it as that? An idea kind of snowballed from like one box under my desk where I would repair all the cell phones right under my desk into 6 months later, I had a full-fledged warehouse full of these things. They were selling like crazy. And I think that most people take for granted, like I said, bodybuilding, in the sense that they continue to just think about the stage stuff. But you take the stage stuff and you set yourself up for what you're doing off of the stage. I think that there's too much focus on what you're doing to get ready for the stage, but there's a whole market of people that are, willing to buy your services or willing to buy your product or whatever it is off of the stage. And you probably want to use stage stuff as just a marketing tool, and not so much on, I need to get first. I want to get first. Now, for some people, that's very important, and when I understand. But for somebody like me, I'm in like the tier of the pro level, I'm honest with myself and I have to say, okay, well, what other part of bodybuilding am I able to grab from? Because there's so many different niches in bodybuilding, whether it's training, whether it's product, whether it's supplements, whatever it may be. You need to find that, and you need to grab hold of it, and you need to, try to make money where you can. And for me, it was the waist trainers. And I think that now most people that, wear waist trainers in the IFBB and the NPC, and they see mine, with the camouflage design, the Paragon name on there, the lion in the front, we just came out with the wasted fat burning serum too, that helps your body super prime and super hot right before cardio with proven ingredients in it that you're not going to find in like a Sweet Sweat, shit that you buy on Amazon. I think that you build this trust with these people on social media so long that when they're ready, and when you're ready to sell something to them, they're going to trust you on these products that you're selling them, and that you're not blowing smoke up their ass. And I think that over the last 2 years, I've built a very good trust with my clients, my customers, that, if I decide in the future to come out with a men's shampoo, or I come out with hair gel, or, whatever it may be, that I expand the idea that I'm going to be a person that they're going to trust, because I've never blown smoke up somebody's ass when it came to me talking to them about prep, me being real about drugs, being real about anything that you trust with the people that follow you.
Okay. Now that is super valuable information. You said building trust with your followers, building trust with people. How does, because I truly believe as a business owner owning a gym, personal training, the best business is word of mouth, right? Referrals. I truly believe in any avenue of business or entrepreneurship. How does one build trust, with their followers on social media, with their clients, just with people in general, in order to build a business or grow a business? How does building trust happen?
I think just being honest. That's going to be the number one. I mean, again, I used to do once I stopped. I used to be sponsored with Muscle Tech. Once I became a pro, they picked me up right away. I was with them for 4 years. And I was so grateful to be with a company like that, somebody that I grew up reading in the magazines, and the best IFBB pros have been with a company like that. And I was able to travel the world and see things that I would have seen by myself. And I have them to thank. Now, the caveat is that you're limited on what you can say on social media, because you are the image. You're the image of the brand. So I wasn't able to be honest social media about my preps and what I'm taking, and what are the pros and cons about doing certain way. As soon as that contract ended, I knew that I just wanted to go on social media and start talking the realities of bodybuilding. I knew that bodybuilding needed more people, more honest people, to break that third wall or fourth wall or whatever it is, and just be honest with these people. And I realized that as soon as I started doing that a lot of other people started doing this naturally, just because it just came natural to them to wanting to talk about these drugs and these performance enhancers and give people advice. And I think that I was one of the first people, the more mainstreamers to come out and start talking about this. And it really helped people trust me. And, my following went up. And I think that my following went up because people had a thirst for that truth. They wanted to know. They knew that there was no question that they could send to me that I wasn't going to at least attempt to ask, at least to try to give them an experience that I had, and why I would or would not recommend doing a certain thing. I think that honesty is what builds that trust. And I think that once you honesty with your customers, you could literally sell anything. Really believe in it. You could literally sell things. Like you said, word of mouth. So I essentially, I told you, I started with one box under my desk, and I would send, I built relationship with bodybuilders all throughout the years, IFBB pros, NPC athletes, and I would just send them free, say, hey, just post when you get it, I would really appreciate it. Write me a review, da, 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 da. And they were using trainers already. So it kind of was just like snowball effect. Their followers see the product and then they buy it, and then it was a web of things. So marketing in the very beginning, I was using that guerrilla style marketing, which really helped because again, they were posting about products that I was sending to them, the waist trainers, and I didn't have to pay anybody other than what came out of my pocket for the product itself. I didn't have to pay somebody hundreds of dollars to do a really pretty post waist trainers. I could just, they were tagging me on all these waist trainers, so I would repost them, and that's hundreds of thousands of dollars right there worth of marketing material that I was getting. And I think social media, without social media, you would be essentially fucked. You would have to put your shit on Amazon. You would have to do things a little bit different. But social media has really helped in that aspect. And I think that guerrilla style marketing in the beginning has helped me a lot. Now we're doing more of like targeted ads, through Shopify and, Facebook and all these things. But in the beginning, it worked perfect for me.
All right, we're going to wrap this up. What I'm just saying, kind of the same question that I asked you earlier, kind of giving, earlier I asked you to give some of the younger listeners or people just starting to get into bodybuilding and think about getting into bodybuilding, maybe some words of wisdom, maybe not necessarily a younger person, but just a business person, a person that has that entrepreneurial mindset. What are some words of wisdom that you could give the listeners, Santi, in terms of business or entrepreneurship?
Got to find a niche. You got to find you enjoy. You got to find a niche that you can market. You got to find a niche that maybe you can do better. So when I say that, I'll give you an example. When I first started the waist training business, I didn't know shit about waist trainers. I wore one that I bought on Amazon, and that's about it. What I did is I did my due diligence and I did research on the materials. I would get fabrics in, I would see what they feel, the durability, all of these factors. And then what I did is I found 5 of the top, winners that I could find, whether it was Amazon, whether it was another brand, and I would try them on. I would test them out myself and say, you know what, I love, but I would edit this from it. So I made a nice wish list of all these different ideas. And then I made one waist trainer that had all the things in my wish list on there. So I think that researching and doing your due diligence is very important. I don't think that you coming up with a product and, there's no like real heart into that product. And I think that most people, when they see my waist trainers, they don't know this backstory. They didn't know that I was, picking up fabrics and doing all this research by myself, buying multiple waist trainers, trying them out, see what the pros and cons were. And when you do this due diligence, you see that when people end up having your waist trainer, they just are so excited to use this product and so excited, and makes me excited to walk into random gyms, and then there's the waist trainer on people. And I remember the first time seeing people wearing it that I didn't expect it. And I'm like, holy shit, like this is getting a lot bigger than what I have ever expected it to be. And that fuels you to continue to do more, put more information out, put more ideas out there. And I think that, again, just circling back to, you need to find a niche. You need to do diligence and research, and you need to believe in the product. You need to believe in your own brand. I think that those are the most important things, and you need to run with it. If it doesn't work out in the beginning, don't expect it to work out. And again, I had one box under my, I had to charge all my credit cards to get my orders. I just didn't have that liquid money to buy in the beginning $40,000, $50,000 worth of inventory, to then hope to God that this inventory would turn and I would sell them. So it was a huge risk, and you're going to have to take risks, make money. You got to take some risks, but man, if you stick with it and it really does, come through for you. I mean, bodybuilding can give you freedom. And that's, at the end of the day, that's what it's done for me.
Fire, man. I love it. We're going to end it right there. I want to be respectful of your time. We've been going well over an hour. Santi, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. Where can people buy the waist trainer? Where can people connect with you? Where can people follow along?
ParagonFitnessGear.com is where you can go ahead and purchase the waist trainer. We also have our wasted fat burning serum out with it. So if you like to roll something on you, it's the first roll on too. So you never have to touch product and put it in your eyes, which I've done in the past, and it's absolutely terrible. So you know, you want that heat, you want that warm up to go right before you start cardio. It's a great tool to be used. This isn't gonna just shed fat, but any one of these things, and I always say, if they help you 1% get better, especially if you're competing on stage, that can make a huge difference between first and third place. You know, the Olympia, or you getting a small check. So these are all, you know, little things. I also have the classic physique posing trunks that I have on there too, that a lot of people are purchasing. These are the same trunks that I wear. These are the same trunks that Breon Ansley wears. A lot of the top pros, Alex Cabernero, that just got them at the Arnold, he wears them. This is a very popular product. If you want to follow me on Instagram and see me do my crazy answering the craziest questions that people can throw at me, you can follow me at IFBB_Santi. And I'll be starting very soon again. I used to do a podcast with Nick Trigilli, your bodybuilding plug, which will also start very, very soon. So a lot of places to check out. If you drop by, just come say what's up.
Awesome, dude. Thank you so much, Santi. Once again, for taking some time out of your day to chop it up with me. It's greatly appreciated.
Oh, thank you for having me. And I hope that at least one person can take something out of this. And I think that you know, hour and a half was well worth it.
For sure, dude. No, the thing that's always enjoyable for me is when I have an athlete on here that's not only an athlete, but they're really also a business person, entrepreneur. Because again, I think there's so much value in that, and you definitely were able to share some great experiences and words of wisdom. So thank you, listeners. I just want to thank you once again for joining us on another episode of Behind the Muscle podcast, whether you're listening on iTunes or YouTube. I just appreciate you. I appreciate you listening. I appreciate you continuing to support Behind the Muscle podcast. 2 things that you guys can do that would be a huge help for the podcast and myself. Take this episode and share it on all your social media platforms. Please tag Santi. Please tag Behind the Muscle so that we know that you listened. Maybe you can share a little bit of some of the wisdom that you gained from this episode through Santi sharing his story. The other thing I would ask, if you haven't done so already, go to YouTube. Make sure you hit the subscribe button. That's how more people can find the podcast, more people listen. If you are enjoying the podcast, that's where I upload all of the podcasts first. You kind of get that first listen through YouTube. So share this episode on all your social media platforms. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. And finally, I will leave you all with this. Remember, behind the muscle, there's always a story. We'll catch you guys later.